Hey everybody, welcome back to Fix the Rust Bucket. In the last video, we were working on removing the front suspension completely off the truck, left and right side. I wanted to do an upgrade with the suspension, a little more heavy duty than what you can get buying stock from the auto parts stores. Was it worth the time and hours spent getting this cleaned up? It absolutely was worth taking the time and the hours, a lot of painstaking hours, to get the parts cleaned up and order the stuff in ourselves. That right there is a complete new front suspension for this truck. Our next video, which will be coming out right after this video, will be reinstalling this entire suspension back on the truck. And then after that video, we'll be moving forward with getting back to the body work on this truck and putting the grille and headlights and all that stuff back in. In order to get this in there, we have to remove the old bushing out and the old sleeve out. Our polys come with new sleeves for them to fit those. So that's what we were using those. We cannot reuse these, but you have to keep, so the inner sleeve you're going to remove, and you have to keep the outer sleeve inside the lower control arm. Once we have them removed, and I'll show you how to remove them. Once we have them removed, you have to take and clean this out. I'm going to use a Dremel and a light piece of sandpaper or emery cloth type stuff. Clean that out, smooth it up, make it nice and clean for it to receive the new bushing and the grease. You don't want any old crud or old rubber inside there. So to get started with removing these old bushings out, you're going to pull the sleeve out first. And to pull the sleeve out, I have this kit right here just to remove ball joints and bushings. I'm going to set the cup up over the outside here, allowing space for that sleeve to slide out. And we're just going to take the other end of our clamp and push this piece right here, right up against the sleeve. Here's one of the old sleeves from the old one. The sleeve and that will just butt right up, and that'll push the sleeve out. Then we can go back and actually remove the rubber part of the bushing. I use a little bit of duct tape on these two pieces. Just makes it easier with two hands to hold them together while you're getting everything set up. Again, back the screw out as far as it'll come out of the seat clamp. Set that in place. Hand tighten this back up directly, the screw directly over the inside sleeve. This screw is a 7/8, and we'll just start tightening it. Loosened up so it feels like it did pop out into the cup. So we'll turn around, back it out. Pull the cup off and we'll see if the whole thing came out or not. So we lucked out. The whole bushing did pull out some. And try and squeeze it as tight as we can and twist it out. The old one's out. The sleeve came out with it, so that's great. Saves us an extra step. Move on to the other side and do the same thing. Okay, so like I stated a little bit earlier in the video, we had to go a little more into detail with the ball joints on the lower control arms. As you can see, these come, like I said, if you order this new, it's going to come the same way, and you're just going to get the generic type ball joint put on it and bushings. We want to upgrade it, so to upgrade it, or if you just want to replace the ball joint yourself, they're pressed on from the manufacturer with 4 rivets. The aftermarket ones you order come with nuts and bolts to put on, but you have to obviously be able to remove the rivets. So we're going to go ahead and get into a little bit of detail. We're going to drill out basically the top head part of the rivet as much as possible, and then knock that off with an air hammer or a chisel and hammer. We'll start off with obviously some smaller bits, work our way up to probably right here is a 7/16, and if you can see, I have it marked with some tape. The reason I have it marked with the tape there is you don't want to drill the hole of the control arm larger than the actual bolt, nut and bolt going through there. So we're going to try and keep it right about to the same size of the rivet inside here. We're also going to, the tape is going to give us our depth, so we drill only through the rivet head and not necessarily down into the control arm, widening that hole or weakening that area. Okay, so as you can see here, where the ball joint's going to go in, where the bushings will go in, they've all been cleaned out, ready to accept the new parts. Now, we're not going to install the ball joints just yet. We're going to install the bushings on both upper and lower control arms first, just to lessen the chance of ruining these rubber boots and thus ruining the ball joint. So to start with your poly bushings, your kit should come with some grease, which these did. What you want to do is you want to grease anywhere that poly bushing is going to come in contact with metal. So for now, we're going to do the outside of this and around this groove to slip them in there. When we get to installing them on the truck, we'll go ahead and grease the inside of these tubes where the bolt and the sleeve go in there. So we'll start off with just squeezing a little bit of grease out on the bushing. And we'll just take and smear it around with our fingers. It's really, really tacky, but a lot, or little, goes a long way. You don't need a ton of it. Make sure that we cover the entire inside of the bushing. Get it along, same thing in here. Put that one to the side. We're going to go ahead and just get all of the bushings covered in grease and then get to installing them. All right, those are for the upper control arms. Let's get the lower control arm bushings and do the same thing. Okay, with all of them greased sufficiently, be right back. Let me get my hands cleaned up and we'll install them. All right, I'm back and I have gloves on. That stuff was a bear to get off my skin. But now we have them all complete. We can go ahead and assemble them back into the control arms. I thought I might need my tool here to push them in, but nope. All right, so upper control arm's done. We'll get to the ball joint in a minute. It's seated. This one's a little bit harder. Right. That one is seated as well. Let's see if we can do this with the lower control arms. Why not? Grab the lower control arm. Now on this, the Chevy truck, you have a wider part that mounts with the bushing and a smaller part. And just pay attention when you're bushings. There is one shorter one and one longer one. See if we can get this one to slide in. Do the other side, the longer one. Perfect. All right, that one's gonna have to get pushed in. We'll see. Let's go ahead and go with the other side. See if we get this one to slip in. All right, I got one left. One stubborn one. And let's figure turn this for you guys to see. Our upper control arm ball joint. So the instructions for this, I'll show you here real quick. This is how your ball joint, or excuse me, this is how your control arm mounts to the vehicle. This is the right side. The tire obviously would be in this area here and the frame rails back here. If you notice on this ball joint, you see that hole, there's a hole right there.
they either come with a hole or like some type of a notch that you'll see in there. That's specifically, it states to make sure that that hole or that notch is facing the direction of the tire. So it doesn't have to be exactly in the center, just eyeball up center here. Stick that in there for the center, and then you can press that back in. Let me get the tool set up to press these in, and we'll get them done. We're gonna go ahead with the upper control arm ball joint. Again, like I said, make sure that hole or notch is facing the right direction towards the tire. Duct tape, it's always an extra hand. Now if you notice on this cup, the cup is enough room to receive this part of the boot without damaging it, but also the end cap here has that large hole in it. That allows the threaded part, if needed, which it won't because obviously that's pretty far in there, but it allows the threaded part to fit through without damaging the ball joint. So we'll go ahead and get this set up and get these two pressed in. Just take, you're not going to be able to do anything with your fingers getting that like we just did with the ball, the bushings. Get it lined up and as straight as possible on here. Get your tool set up and then crank it down. Biggest thing you want to do is make sure you keep that ball joint as straight as possible going back into the control arm. You don't want to go in crooked, and then you're going to either have to press it back out or you could possibly damage it. So take your time setting it up and make sure that that's in there correctly. Just going to double check, make sure everything looks good. My threads for the ball joint are coming through that without any issues, not damaging, you know, it's not bumping up against the edges, damaging the threads. We're just going to go slow, again, making sure it presses in evenly. All right, so with that one pressed completely in, we're just going to install the C-clamp on the top of it here, and we'll get to the second one. Just double check, make sure it's seated in the groove, which it is. So the only thing left on this one is we're going to put the grease fitting on top, but you have both your bushings installed and the ball joint on your upper control arm. We'll knock out the other upper control arm and then get to the lower ones. The new ones have this notch on them right here. Simple way to tell you which way to go, but obviously it goes down and then there's that notch there. Slip that in. Take your 4 bolts. Slip it in there. Take your 4 bolts. Slip your 4 bolts through the holes. Then on the bottom side here, the nuts come with a Teflon locking ring. We are going to add a little bit of Loctite though, since this is a kind of an important part of your car. So for just basically added security, I'm going to add a little bit of red Loctite to it. And then we'll tighten these down. Probably don't need the Loctite, but I'm putting it on there just as a precaution.
Last one. Just double check again. Just went back and checked all 4 of them one more time, make sure they're all on there tight, because you'll see here the control arm, it is going to compress a little bit. So after I tightened them all down pretty tight, just went back around and made sure they were all same. And that wraps it up. All right, thanks everybody for watching. If you like this kind of stuff, consider subscribing to the channel, maybe giving me a thumbs up. Our next video will be installing all that suspension that you just saw laying out on the ground back on the truck, get this back on its wheels so we can start working on the body work, get this truck on the road.